Okay, we're good. I'm muting.
Okay.
Yet another Skype update. No idea why it's been updated. Maybe you should do less talking and more listening. If someone is teaching you, if your sensei is teaching you, Tricky, you don't just sit there and blab. Hey Tricky, I would say don't run TikTok this week because don't run TikTok this week since neither one of us are going to have our cameras on. I was going to try my camera if Matt was on, but since Matt's on, I'm not going to have the camera. So can we not run TikTok tonight? I have the camera set up, so hopefully next week I will use it. Yo, do you got Skype ready?
Yeah.
Let's see. Make sure. What the hell? So wait, Yield, let me ask.
Yeah.
Foam Stars was a PlayStation Plus game for February, right?
Yes.
I have not even fucking played that, downloaded that game. Holy shit.
I haven't taken any of the PlayStation Plus games for this month.
Alright, well. It's not a great sign for that game, but
right, I had no desire to get that game since it looked blatantly like a Splatoon ripoff. I'm like, you know what? I just no, thank you. Even if you gave it to me for free.
Yeah, well, I mean, I agree that with Tricky that you should at least put them in your library. But I forgot about that game. I fucking forgot it was free for PlayStation Plus this month.
Well,
even after all the talking we did.
You still have till Tuesday, so well, actually, you have until Monday at 3 in the morning. So,
all right, Yeld, you ready to record?
Sure, why not?
Alright, I am recording.
The squigglies are squiggling.
Alright, Yield, go ahead and give me 5 seconds of silence. Oh, well, I thought after the countdown of 5 seconds of silence is when you would tell me to go. Alright, do 5 seconds of silence, Yield. And count down from 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You are listening to Trophy
Tricky, you hit the intro music last week. You
with
hit the
your
intro
host,
music.
Tricky Mick, Alex,
I Yield to No One, Sid, and Ender Phoenix.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Trophy Horse. This is episode 611, and we got a reduced crew this week, but you know what? We'll still have plenty of chatter and discussion and banter, as we always do. I Yield to No One. Are you ready to man this two-person crew today?
For democracy, Alex. We will do it.
That's right, folks. We're not going to stop talking Helldivers. We got some stories from the week to talk about. But before we get into that, Tricky is behind the scenes. He's producing. He was doing a little bit too much talking. You know, he's on after his dental surgery. He's supposed to be doing limited talking, and apparently he got online to play Helldivers with Yield. This past week, and did too much asking of questions, too much talking, and he's feeling the pain. How was it, Yield, being sensei to Tricky?
It was all right. I mean, I was just kind of going over the basics of, you do this, you do that. This is for this is for that. So he unfortunately, I was doing a solo suicide, working on collecting Epic, and he jumped in the middle of all heck breaking loose.
Yeah, I'm surprised you're running suicide difficulty by yourself. That's not something people do lightly.
No, you learn by trying.
Well, Tricky had made comments today. I guess he was playing with Tross, who had also been here on the show before, and he said that Tross was just going around killing stuff. He wasn't really explaining anything. So Tricky, I guess, had to switch senseis and come to Yield, but. Yield, we've kind of started off here, and Matt is also not joining us. He's looking after, he's taking care of some stuff, so hopefully he'll be back with us next week. He's got to do a little babysitting tonight, but yeah. So me and Yield been playing more Helldivers. I was playing with Yield, and we call him Jones, DJ. Is Jones part of the Facebook group, Yield? I know he's been around for years. He's in the Facebook group. He just doesn't do a lot on Facebook. No, that's fine. I understand. I've just seen him around before, so he's been like a Trophy Horse OG for quite a long time. Yes. And I mean, you we talked about it. You've moved up to the suicide difficulty, which is difficulty 7 out of 9. How's it been going so far?
Not too bad. It's hard to avoid not all heck breaking loose, but I try not to let all heck break loose. And really, I'm just going into suicides primarily just to get the epic or the very rare. I can't remember how
the super samples.
The super samples. Okay, I'm going in just to get the 3 super samples and to finish the objective and get out of Dodge. So that way I can upgrade my ship modules. That's primarily why I'm doing it. Really, I'm kind of mainly focusing on challenging and hard because I feel like I'm more comfortable there right now. But the more we do suicide, the more comfortable I'm kind of getting. I'm still trying to find the perfect for me loadout with my stratagems to offensive weapons to take with me.
Yeah. No, I totally get that. And we've, you never know what's going to happen with me doing the hosting. Kind of a wild card scenario we got here. Before we go any further, we've been hopefully earning some trophies. I know I've earned some trophies this week in Helldivers too, and I imagine you have as well.
Yeah, I got a few.
How about we go over our updated trophy counts here?
Sounds good.
Tricky Mick is a level 902, total trophy count of 30,089 with a platinum count of 831, now tied with our friend Sid. I'm level 502, total trophy count of 9,759 with a platinum count of 168 in 167 games. Yield?
I Still staying ahead of Alex, but not by much. He's charging very hard. I am a level 507 with the trophy count of 10,047 and a platinum count of 183.
Matt, level 220, total trophy count of 1,309, and a platinum count of 1. No, I'm just fucking with you. While he was not here, I figured I'd add that in, but no, still plat at 0, but Matt's still great. So, and Sid, level 884, total trophy count of 26,562, and a platinum count of 831. All right. I think that since Sid has as many platinums as Tricky, but has far fewer total trophies, I think that means Sid wins because he's got more platinums to the trophy to platinum ratio. Better.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah. So Sid wins this week, as he usually does every week. That made no sense, but Tricky's in the chat saying we're both haters. No, we're not haters, Tricky. We're just supporters of Sid. That's all. We're anti-haters. All right, so really, Yield, anything you've been playing besides Helldivers this week, and if Helldivers is it, that we can jump back into more discussion, because I have some favors to ask here on the show. Hold each other accountable publicly. Not really accountable, but just make sure we band together and get democracy spread as well as we can. But anything else you've been playing?
See here. So I have been playing Lego 2K Drive. That is a game that will be probably a platinum later in the year. I hit my 3,000 mile trophy. Hold on here. What does PSN profile say?
I was pretty sure. I thought I saw a picture you posted on Facebook where you actually had the platinum.
Not for Lego 2K Drive. Maybe it was somebody else, but it wasn't me.
Honestly, you're the only person that I know that is currently playing the game or that posts about it, but
okay.
My eyes could just be deceiving me.
I hit the 3,000 mile trophy 5 days ago, so that would have been Tuesday. So now I have to do the 6,000 mile trophy. So that's just a lot of driving around the map, doing races or whatever to farm that out. I know I am not going to leave my system on for 2 days and my car parked against a wall with the tires spinning or something like that is what people said to do to get it in like 2 days.
I don't know if you remember back in the Warhawk days, they had a trophy called Bandwidth Donor where people were leaving their systems on overnight or for a couple days to get that trophy.
Yeah, you had to host a ranked room for 3 hours, I think. Or 6 hours or something like that. So yeah, I got that trophy because that's what I did. I left my system on overnight for a ranked server and went to bed. See here. Obviously, been playing Helldivers. I've been playing Truck Driver, doing the Heading North DLC. I am 2 trophies away from having that DLC done. And I've also been playing Borderlands, the Handsome Jack Collection, the pre-sequel on the 4. I started True Vault Hunter because I need to get to level 50. And then I will have that game platinumed. So that's kind of another game that I'm kind of grinding through, so to speak. And then I've also played the demo for Contra, Operation Gulaga. Was on my email the other day and had an email from Limited Run Games. And I clicked on it, was looking through, and they said that they were taking pre-orders for a Contra game. And I'm like, what? So I got to looking at it and got to investigating and saw that there is a new Contra game about to come out. And so investigated a little farther and saw that there was a demo available as of now. So I hopped on my system and downloaded it and gave it a whirl. I think it was Friday. Yeah, Friday before we all got on and started playing Helldivers. I ran through the demo of it and it was fun. For those of us that remember the original Contra, it felt like a combination of the NES Contra and the SNES Super Contra.
Very nice. Was it fun? Did you like the demo, or are you gonna
I enjoyed it. They had an option where you could pick like 2 perks. That you had like an option of like 5, 6 perks that you could pick, and you could pick 2 of them, and then you could go through the level with those 2 perks. I ran with you didn't lose your gun if you died, and what was the other one? I can't remember what the other one was with, but I definitely went with that one because I knew I was going to die, and I didn't want to lose my machine gun or my spread gun, whichever one I collected. So that was nice.
And of course, Helldivers, which I have been playing. Oh, let me ask, did you get the Power Wash Simulator Platinum?
I did.
That's what I was thinking of. I know that you had gotten that. You had posted about that Platinum, and maybe that's the Platinum I was confusing with,
yes.
Conflating with.
Which they added a Warhammer DLC. Prepare to Die or Scum, or Jonesy was telling us about that they added a Warhammer DLC. So for those of you who are Warhammer fans, Warhammer hams.
Yeah,
Warhammer hands.
Wait, is that in Power Wash Simulator?
Yeah.
I don't know how that would work out, but more power to them.
So now they have a SpongeBob DLC pack. They have a Back to the Future, and now they have a Warhammer.
How do you incorporate that into Power Wash?
They also have a Final Fantasy VII DLC pack, but there's no trophies tied to it. It's just a free download pack.
Yeah, but how do you, like, what part of Warhammer is in Power Wash?
I didn't watch the trailer. My guess is you're just cleaning rooms or equipment from Warhammer.
Okay. Like, if you like SpongeBob, do you get to clean his pineapple house under the sea?
I believe so. I know with Back to the Future, you get to clean the DeLorean, the train, the movie theater where Jaws comes out and tries to eat you, the holographic Jaws. So the free Tomb Raider DLC, you get to go into Croft Manor and clean Croft Manor.
That's, it's good for them for thinking outside the box. I would have never thought that they would, like, that kind of game would have DLC. Like, they would just have you, like, especially like licensed stuff you have to pay for. Like, if you're doing like a simulation game, like, you could just have people, clean ordinary parts of, IRL, like their garage, their backyard, places in town. But I wouldn't think that they would actually pay for licensing, for DLC that they can then sell people. So, I mean, good for them for thinking outside the box.
They did a Christmas DLC that launched mid-December last year, and it was a free update, and you got to clean Santa's workshop. So that was kind of fun. Got to clean the sleigh and the workshop, and
do you have to clean up all the reindeer poop, and for that matter, all the elf poop left in the workshop?
What got the workshop dirty, according to the story as you're playing it, was an elf experiment. What kind of elf experiment was it? Had to do with some kind of like new toy and something.
Oh man, how weird are those elves getting up at the North Pole?
Yeah, and it like dirtied the entire workshop. So.
Well, we can only hope that with how many toys they have to produce, that Santa's given those elves bathroom breaks and lunch breaks for that matter. But I mean, yeah, that's cool DLC. Did any of the other DLCs have trophy attached to them? Yield?
Just as of right now, it's just the SpongeBob, Back to the Future, and Warhammer are the DLCs that have trophies attached to them.
I hate to say it, but that's an easy way to get trophy hunters to buy your DLC is by making them, like, taking away their 100% and then, attaching it to DLC. Like, because otherwise, like, if you get the platinum trophy in that game and then like the DLC comes out, like, for a trophy hunter, there's, unless you want to play a specific location or you really love that game, there's not really much incentive to go back. Whereas trophies themselves are kind of, as sad as it is to say, much more incentive for some people when it comes to video games.
Well,
what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, that, and also those who like 100%. I
like 100%, so I mean that's the entire. I mean I like KO Kangaroo, but I mean that's. probably the biggest reason that I bought that DLC that they put out for that is because I'm like, oh, I need I should say that even a better example is the Resident Evil 4, because I bought that DLC mostly because it had trophies in it, and I had to. It took away from my percentage. I didn't 100% Resident Evil 4, obviously, because I don't have the Platinum Trophy, but it lessened my percent to have that DLC out with trophies. So I got the Ada Wong Several Ways DLC pretty much just because of the trophies, and was actually able to up my percentage by finishing it all. But
so I know, like, games that I enjoy, if there's DLC out, I'm willing to, in essence, give them my money and give the DLC a try to either 100% it or move on, or to move it more closer to 100%. So, like, in essence, like Truck Driver, I had that game platinumed, I think, in 22. And then I saw last year that they released some DLC for it. And obviously it had trophies. And I was like, you know what? I enjoyed that game. So I'll pick that DLC up and get back my 100% and have some more fun with that game.
And then Yield, much like you, I have been playing. Really, I mean, well, unlike you, I've only been playing Helldivers. I've been focusing on that game quite a bit. I'm only 4 or 5 trophies away from the platinum. So I've been putting some work in. I actually overtook you in levels because you had started playing like a week and a half before I had, and I think we're tied now, or maybe you've overtaken me again. But I had actually
something like that. Yeah, we're real close in level wise, but you've got more trophies. I've got. What does it say here? I've got 32 out of the 39. So, and I know. I mean,
we're close. We're close in that regard too. So, but yeah, I think you're talking about loadouts earlier, and really, what I think works for me is the shield generator backpack and the grenade launcher. I just love just launching grenades into groups of bugs and just vaporizing them. That always works really well. And then, I like to have one Eagle Strike because I've upgraded that part of my ship. That ship module all the way up. So I now get one extra Eagle Strike before it has to return to ship to re-up on ammo. And the fourth one I usually do is the orbital...
rail cannon?
Yeah, the orbital rail cannon, because generally, it 100% will always take out a charger in one hit. Sometimes the Bile Titan it will. But at the very least, it'll do some severe damage to it. And, it can recharge, unlike the orbital laser. The orbital laser is one use and it doesn't recharge. The rail cannon does recharge, so at least you can use it multiple times on large enemies, which, that's the thing that can really turn the tide in, like, Suicide and the higher mission difficulties, is just having something that can handle those bigger enemies, because obviously the little piddly enemies, they'll swarm you and they can kill you really easily, but really what you don't want is to have one of those big guys, the Bile Titans, the Chargers, hanging around.
Yeah.
And what gun was Jones using last night to take out Bile Titans? Because he was just like one-shotting them.
Oh, he unlocked what's it called? The Scav? I think it's called
the spear. Is it the spear?
Or something like that. It's like a bazooka or a rocket launcher, so to speak. Because I was using it for a little bit because he dropped it when he died, and I picked it up and was using it. So I have yet to buy it. I probably will, seeing that he was able to lock on to the Bile Titan and kind of wipe it out in 1 or 2 shots. So I liked, we had a good setup because I was carrying Cluster Bomb, and that Cluster Bomb was doing a real good job wiping out all the small to medium guys. So it definitely, this one, Helldivers 2 over the original Helldivers, it really matters to have stratagems that, when you're playing with a group, that complement what your teammates are carrying.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I feel like now we've all had enough time with the game, because I'm at like 37 plus hours with the game already, which shows you how much I've played. Like, like I said, that's the only game I've been focusing on really since getting the Platinum Trophy in A Plague Tale. So, I mean, we've all been comfortable enough within the game and to know like which stratagems really are good for us and kind of are, a benefit to the way we play. And as far as like, buying stuff, I still have some of the ship modules to upgrade, but when using the requisition bucks to buy stratagems, I pretty much have everything I want Like at this point, I don't even know what to buy anymore because I'm just spending money just to unlock everything, just to say I've unlocked everything. But I kind of have my setup, where I want it to be at this point. And I started out fighting the automatons, and then I switched to the bugs. Yield, it seems like we do a lot of fighting the bugs together. Is there any particular reason that you fight more of the bugs than the automatons?
I don't know. That's just where I'm focused right now. I guess it doesn't feel to me like the war has switched over to the automatons. I've gone over there when they were doing daily missions. I would go over there to get my, do my daily to get my requisition. That is, and I guess the main reason I switched over to start fighting more bugs was because I felt like I didn't have the offensive stratagems or the weapon stratagems needed to really effectively beat the automatons. Now, since I'm north of level 20, I've got everything unlocked. So I could probably go back and fight them more, which I probably should because there's a Hulk trophy that I need to get.
You and I both need that, so I was actually going to ask you for some help for that. But before we go any further, I want to give a shout out to Hannibal9090. Thank you for following. We definitely want to appreciate Hannibal for that. I had a thought. Oh, I wanted to give out a trophy tip actually for the gold trophy for Hold My Primary. I'm going in, which Yield got before any of us. And Yield, I'm curious as to how did you get that trophy?
So I went in because Matt and I were talking about it the week before, and I'm like, I think it would probably be best to do on your own. And so I went in, and I had myself loaded for bear. I don't think I had the orbital, or I don't think I had the rail cannon unlocked. So I went in with the laser. I went in with cluster bomb. Think I might have went in with maybe my Tesla. And I went in with Eagle Airstrike. Yeah, cluster bomb and airstrike. And I just went in and I avoided all question marks on your map. I'm not here to go. I wasn't in to go for samples, and I wasn't in to look for requisitions or war medals or nothing. I went in, dodged everybody I could, went, did my objective, went to the extraction point, and luckily I was able to get up on a container, which those are harder to destroy, and then just kind of sat there and threw out my Tesla coil at one corner and kind of just sat there until the ship landed and then got out of Dodge. So it sounds easier than what it was. I went in with my Uzi. I like that as my sidearm. And yeah, that's what I did. It took me 2 tries. The first try, I went in and I can't remember what I did wrong. And all heck broke loose, and I ended up dying, and I had to end up using my main weapon. So the second time I went in and was more focused on not to let all heck break loose.
So the tip I'll give, because I got it the other day, Saturday morning, while playing myself as well. But the Eradicate missions are really good for this trophy and for the trophy about not dying on extreme, because what you can do, the tips I've seen out there are basically have people, especially the Eradicate missions are the ones where it's like kill, 150 or 200 bugs. It depends on what, or automatons, whichever one you're fighting. But basically, you have to kill a certain amount, and you're in small space. So basically, what they recommend is bring sentries and just let the sentries do the work for you. Now you can also use some airstrikes that as Yield says as well. But basically, the Eradicate missions are really good for both of these. That's how I actually got both of those trophies. But with the automatons, when you do the Eradicate missions for them, there is a tall building, like a really tall building on the map that you can actually land your Hellpod on, so where you're not just on like a small building away from them. You're on a tall ass building where most of them cannot shoot. Some of them can still hit you, but most cannot. And I got on this building and I was just throwing down stratagems. I was doing airstrikes. I had my sentries out there doing work, and that's basically how I got it. I got the however many kills it was, and then I jumped off the building and ran to the ship and got out of Dodge. So Again, the automaton map for Eradicate, look for a really tall building and try to land your hell pod on it. Stay up there, duck if you need to, crouch down, but yeah, just launch stratagems and stuff from on top of that, and you'll get a pretty easy gold trophy. So that's how I do it.
I will have to try that, because I need the extract on extreme without dying. And is that the only difficulty? Is that the only difficulty? Well, and the
Gone in 360 seconds.
Gone in 360 seconds. Yeah, those are the two difficulty ones I need. Everything else is just, like specific trophies. I haven't got the Ragdoll one yet or the Hulk one, but yeah. So I got 2 difficulty trophies, and then everything else is just kind of some grindy trophies, quote unquote.
Yield, you dropped out there for me for a sec. Have you gotten the Gone in 360 seconds?
No. I need that one, and I need Helldive. And then, I need more than that, but those are the 2 difficulty ones. Difficulty related I need.
So before we move on to our news topics, I was going to ask you, if you have any time tonight, or, this week, do you want to go for that Hulk trophy? For those who don't know, the trophy is called, let's call it a tie, or something like that. And basically what you got to do is you got to go into a mission with the automatons. You got to take the arms off a Hulk, which is essentially their Bile Titan, their big, beefy enemy. Let's call it a draw. Yeah, Tricky just confirmed. And then extract without killing the Hulk. You want to try that later tonight? You want to try that sometime this week?
We can try that sometime this week. I figured my idea is either take the rail gun or the autocannon gun and blow his arms off that way.
Yeah, I'm sure there's numerous weapons you can use, but yeah, he shows up as specific missions on the medium difficulty, and I think it's called medium, but the number 4, because 5 is hard, challenging. So yeah, he shows up on challenging as a specific task, like, hey, go kill the Hulk, or he starts showing up randomly at the hard difficulty, number 5. So I think that if you do the one on challenging and he shows that he's an actual task that you have to complete, you would then have to wait the 40 minutes to expire for the shuttle to show up, instead of just like meeting one randomly in a map and then taking his arms off and then doing the objectives and extracting. But
yeah,
either way,
that's what happened to us when we first ran across him. Was he was an objective? He was the only objective was defeat the Hulk. And when we went into it as a group, it was like, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to go for the shoot his arms off and extract, or do you just want to kill him? And we all decided, well, since it's the main operation, we'll just kill him. And we ended up killing him with the autocannon turret. I threw the autocannon turret into the building, or into the fortress that he was in, and before we could even climb in there, the autocannon wiped them out.
When I got that trophy, I got it. I was not playing with you all. I was playing with randoms. I didn't even realize that the Hulk was out there. Like, it just happened that somebody had killed him or he had died. I didn't even really recognize that he was on the map. So that was my experience.
Nice. Oh, I got a trophy.
Yeah, well, whereas the Bile Titan, I knew that was on the map. So
kind of hard to miss him.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, that has been your Helldivers half hour. What do you say we go ahead and talk about our PlayStation Plus games for the month of March? And talking PlayStation Plus, I admitted this to Yield before we went on the air. I feel so bad now because I completely forgot Foam Stars was a thing. I've completely forgotten that Foam Stars was free for February.
Still have a chance to get it.
I know, and I know I should tonight. I'm going to play some games after we get off of here. I should add all the PlayStation Plus games for February, although I bought Rollerdrome, so I'm pretty sure, I don't need to worry about that one. But that just goes to show you, like, after playing Plague Tale and, playing Helldivers, just Foam Stars was, like, way off the map. Oh, Tricky in chat, he would like us to mention what he has been playing. Well, we know Helldivers too, Tricky. But what else have you been playing, sir? Usually we like you to talk about this, but what have you been playing? It's on the agenda.
Yeah. He says he's been playing Helldivers 2, Suicide Squad, Division 2, and Forbidden West, which I want to know, what are you doing? It's on the right side of the agenda.
I have the mobile version up, so I can't see that.
That would be why.
Yeah.
So, Tricky, what are you doing in Forbidden West? Because I thought you already had the platinum, or do you not have the? Oh, you're replaying it on the 4. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes some sense then.
Which I saw something today. Speaking of Horizon, I saw that Sadie Sink from Stranger Things has been cast to play Aloy. So.
Well, no, Tricky. The DLC for Forbidden West was 5 only. If you remember, I talked about it when I played it to Matt and Alex. Oh, you know. Okay. Well, I would sure hope you would know. Well, I know. I played it. That's why I made the comment I made when I talked about it. Why I think that it was a good DLC, but yet it could have some issues because if you played it on the 4, let's say like Nitro, and you don't play the DLC when 5 starts, there could be some story elements that you're like, wait, this doesn't make any sense. So, anyway.
Well, I know Tricky has played at least one of these games we're getting free from March.
Yes, it is.
Okay, well, Tricky's putting comments in the chat. Sorry if I'm distracted. So the games we are getting from March 2024, this comes from an article from IGN from Taylor Lyles. Destiny 2, The Witch Queen, Sifu, Hello Neighbor 2, and EA Sports F1 23. And Saber Rider in Twitch says that Sifu is worth getting, which is the game that I do believe Tricky had played. I'm pretty sure Tricky played Sifu. That wasn't you, was it?
No, yeah, I've played some of it. I need to get back to it. I suck at it, but I enjoy it, but I suck at it. So Destiny 2, I didn't even get the other Destiny DLC, Destiny 2 or Destiny 2 as a whole when they dropped it. So for those of you who haven't got the Witch Queen yet, that would be good. I've heard good things about Hello Neighbors, but I would want to play the first one before I played the second one. So I might pick that up. And I like F1 racing, but then again, it's EA, so I don't know. I'll have to investigate that one.
Yeah, so as Tricky was saying, Destiny 2 is free for everyone, but you pay for the expansion packs, and of course that would make the Witch Queen, like we said, free this month. All these games, as it's important to note, will be available for PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5 owners. I know there was some concern brought up about dwindling amount of free PlayStation 4 games in the PlayStation Plus list, but I think that maybe that was just an aberration within a month. I mean, eventually, yeah, they're probably going to wean them off, but this month all 4 games are available to PlayStation 4 owners, so it's not like they're getting completely forgotten every month. I mean, yeah, the Sifu, I thought about buying that. It kind of I was worried that game would get lost in the month that came out, when it came out with what Dead by Daylight 2, Horizon Forbidden West, and there was one other game I feel like came out that month that...
yeah, there was a lot of good games. I know I picked it up. I was able to get like the quote-unquote the collector's edition for like $25 one day at GameStop, and I'm like, I'm not missing this, and picked it up. But
yeah, so I'll definitely add Sifu to my library. Hello Neighbor 2. Hello Neighbor I've never been interested in. I mean, I'm not really the idea of sneaking around your creepy neighbor's house just never has really appealed to me. Destiny 2, I haven't ever played Destiny 2, and I'm not going to start now. And EA Sports F1 23, I don't like simulation racing, so Sifu is really the only game for me. But again, I think that you have to. It's good for Sony to have so much variety in the month for free. A fighting game, more of a stealth game, a racing game, and a shooter. Like, there's a lot of variety there. So I think that at the very least, Sony deserves some props for making sure that there's something, or as well as variety. They can. Yeah, something for everyone to play. Hopefully.
Yeah, because not all the months are like that. So on a month like this, that I'd say it's a good month. Even though, like, I already own Sifu, and I may or may not pick up anything else, but for the fact that it's a wide variety of games.
And Ubisoft is hoping a wide variety of gamers are going to jump into their quote-unquote first quadruple A game, Skull and Bones. This article comes from IGN and Wesley Yenpool. The headline reads, Ubisoft says Skull and Bones has record player engagement but fails to announce sales. Ubisoft said the recently released Skull and Bones has achieved record player engagement but did not detail how many copies sold or player counts. The press release indicated players average around 4 hours of playtime daily, the second highest ever at the company. Unfortunately, this does not detail whether Ubisoft's long-awaited game is actually a success or not. Of note is the game did offer an 8-hour free trial, which may also contribute to higher numbers. So you could have two people playing a fucking game, and if they average 6 hours, then their playtime is 6 hours. And that could be one of your highest engagement games. So this actually proves nothing as to the success of Skull and Bones. I mean, which the article says, but like, do you see what I'm saying there, Yield? Like, player engagement, like the average playtime. Because really, if you have, like, say, 1 million people, chances are your engagement's going to be all over the place because you've got so many people playing, and some people will be more into it than others. But when you have a small dedicated audience, chances, and I don't know if the audience is small, but I've seen articles to suggest that. But if you have a smaller audience, like 2 or 10 or 20 people, if they all are dedicated and they all play 10 hours, there's not really much there to carry the average down. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, that makes sense.
I mean, do you think there is any good in this for Ubisoft? Because I don't know about you, Yield, and I've been sharing things, I've seen it, but the news hasn't really been that great for Skull and Bones, and I know you do still intend to play it.
So, what guff I've seen about the game, everybody's screaming that it's not Black Flag. And that's how this game originally was intended to be. I said when I played the demo, the last closed beta that I played, if you go in expecting Skull and Bones, you're going to be disappointed and you're going to crap all over the game. But playing the beta, I saw where the game could be fun, and that's why I went ahead and continued with my pre-order, because I'm like, I see where this game can be fun. Helldivers has just been way more fun, and I haven't even popped the game. I popped the game in one night and loaded it onto my system because that was when we were having difficulty logging in, and I'm like, well, screw it, I'm going to play some Skull and Bones, and then I was able to get logged in that night, and I didn't go play. So I intend to get to it, and I'm going to play it and enjoy it as much as I can, but not coming out and saying what your sales numbers are, it probably didn't sell the way you wanted it to, which honestly isn't a surprise considering that it was in developer purgatory and you changed the game direction 3 different times that I can call off the top of my head. And so, it is not too early to talk about. If it did really, really well, they'd be seeing it on top of the mountain. Don't play devil's advocate. I am letting them know you said that. Tricky says it's too early to talk sales figures, which is baloney. But we'll agree to disagree.
I think that if you're trumpeting the success of a game and you have to find some way around talking about the sales and the bad reviews, because the game does have bad reviews, let's call it out, and that's from user reviews and critic reviews, by the way. If you have to find a workaround that to give praise to the game, it's probably not a good sign for the game, honestly, because they use everything from like Steam concurrent players to all this different stuff. But if you're like, well, the average engagement time, yeah, but that actually tells you nothing about how many people are playing the game. So it's not a great sign that that's what they're going for, that they have to find praise in some very specific, oddly specific thing. But I guess, we'll give the game time and see, how well it does. But you got to think that, and I saw something like, I can't remember what it was, but I saw something where the number of people playing Black Flag had jumped up after the release of Skull and Bones, because I guess a lot of people disappointed with Skull and Bones who just wanted Black Flag again.
Well, that makes sense because Well, you got to think, when they announced Skull and Bones, they specifically said that it was going to be basically the naval combat of Black Flag, but a whole game of it. Which the Black Flag naval combat is freaking awesome and absolutely a blast. The only thing that got repetitive, in my opinion, was the boarding ships part. After you do it, 3 times, it's like, oh, okay. I wish I could skip this, so to speak, skip this animation part. But, the boarding ships and killing people and doing stuff like that, that was all fun. I enjoyed myself immensely sailing around the Caribbean, blowing up ships. The rest of the Assassin's Creed story was fun, but just the fact of sailing around and being a pirate, totally worth it.
Well, and you have to wonder about the success of Helldivers coming out so close around it that, that also cannot be helping people looking for that multiplayer itch. Yeah, it's different styles of multiplayer, but having a game like that that's so popular, not only on PlayStation but also on Steam, doesn't necessarily help Skull and Bones or make Skull and Bones look all that great.
Agreed.
And the same could be said for Suicide Squad as well. I'm sorry, Tricky, but the same could be said about both those games. So... Yield, any additional thoughts on when do you think you're going to sit down and play some more Skull and Bones? Because, here's the thing. I don't want to say, a lot of multiplayer games have their time in the sun and then they move on, people move on. Do you worry that with some of the reviews and how bad they've been, I think Tricky posted in the chat that they were 60 for critics, and this is a Metacritic, I assume, 60 for critics overall and then 3.5 for users. Do you worry that that people are going to eventually just drop this game and you're going to show up to play it and it's going to be just no one?
Well, to be honest, I wasn't really going to, unless one of the guys picks it up, I'm really not going to play with randoms. I'm just going to do my own pirate story. That was my onset to begin with, was not to be, going after other people or playing with randoms. I was just going to live my own pirate story. So if that part of it dies, as long as I can still do my pirate story, I'm good. The thing that's really going to hurt me, so to speak, is I probably should start playing it soon because Sea of Thieves is on the horizon, and I could see me totally losing myself in that.
All right, we're going to move on while Tricky is going nuts in the comments trying to defend Suicide Squad. We had ideas and we were trying to make a case, as Tricky's making his case for Suicide Squad. We were trying to make a case last week for the upcoming, Mandalorian game from EA, and Tricky's saying not Suicide Squad.
No, all that stuff he was posting in the chat was about Skull and Bones.
Okay. Well, I'm just so used to Tricky defending Suicide Squad that I just assumed it was that. But we talked about what we wanted from a Mandalorian game, and well, it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. This comes from Tech for Gamers, written by Avinash Jarani. Headline reads: EA confirms 670 layoffs, canceling Star Wars Mandalorian game. EA has announced a restructuring of its company and letting go of hundreds of developers, adding to the layoffs conducted in 2023, amounting to 11% of its workforce. EA has outlined new goals for its future, relying on fewer licensed IPs. Already announced projects like Iron Man and Black Panther will move forward and focus on its own IPs like Battlefield will continue. Meanwhile, the recently detailed Respawn Star Wars FPS that was supposed to be based on a Mandalorian bounty hunter has now been canceled. So more industry layoffs, EA with 11% of its workforce, a massive amount. EA is a big company. That's a very large amount of people, 670 people. And I know EA had been shopping themselves out to be bought, which I don't know now with Activision being bought by Microsoft, who EA thinks is going to buy them, unless, Disney does it. But, Yield, how disappointed are you? How disappointed are you at this news? Because I'm assuming that going back and watching the Mandalorian episodes, for our Patreon content, which we do, episodes on the Mandalorian, doing discussions on those, it had to be, you got a little spark. You're like, yeah, I might see this and enjoy this, and then they've already stepped on it. They've already killed it.
So there are multiple things I'm thinking about here. First off, why why announce it if only 2 weeks later or a week later, somewhere in that ballpark, that you're going to come out and lay a bunch of people off and cancel it? You should have never announced it to begin with, or confirmed rumors that it's coming out. Why I was glad that there was a Mandalorian game in the works. I was a little disappointed it was Respawn, even though they have done really well with Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor. I was hoping it would be somebody else. I was hoping that Disney had learned their lesson by putting all of their eggs for Star Wars in one basket and kind of letting multiple developers, tackle Star Wars games. So I'm hoping maybe that because EA said they don't want to do it, that maybe Disney will go, you know what, fine, we're going to move this project to somebody else, because they do have a Mandalorian movie coming out. So this would be a good, not necessarily tie the game into the movie, because Respawn's wasn't going to be, but it would be a good time to have a Mandalorian video game, in my opinion. Now, on the totally flip side of the coin of all that I'm saying, you're still going to do Iron Man and you're still going to do Black Panther. People have moved on from Marvel. They've moved on from Marvel as much as they've moved on from Star Wars. I don't get it.
In the chat, Saber Rider 13 says, you do understand what Disney asked for when you use their IP. Is right about how much money they're getting is almost a wash. And Tricky points out that Quantum Dream and others are already making Star Wars games, so it doesn't have to be EA. The complete canceling of the
1313?
The Mandalorian game is definitely definitely disappointing. And now with the series being at its peak popularity, or who knows, maybe its peak popularity was after season 2. Because I not heard people outright shit on season 3, but it seems like the popularity of Mandalorian was strongest in season 1 and 2. But now would be the time to release. I'm not just saying like shit out a crappy game, just to take advantage of this, but they would have. If they had something like where they released Star Wars Jedi and then also had Mandalorian game to go as long as a shooter, you have your lightsaber combat game in Survivor and Fallen Order, and then you have like a shooter, in the Mandalorian game, that kind of would have been a nice combo. But, EA and Disney didn't really capitalize on that well. And now we've seen Disney or EA, who has a penchant for canceling Star Wars games. I mean, you mentioned 1313, and was that the bounty? There was another Star Wars bounty hunter game that they canceled. Was that 1313?
Yeah, 1313. You were playing as either a bounty hunter or a scoundrel, a smuggler, so to speak. They didn't say Han Solo, but you were playing like either a bounty hunter or a smuggler, which is kind of Outlaws. You're playing as a smuggler, which comes out later this year. But yeah. EA, the Star Wars license under EA, they've had some real good winners, but they've also canceled a lot of projects.
It's been more miss than hit.
It has been, yes.
Because you just think about the Battlefield game or the Battlefront games and how they were really good on PS2. And then now EA throws microtransactions and everything just goes to hell and people hate them. So, EA, it's good that the Star Wars license, as Tricky reminds us, has been shopped around a little bit. That sounds really bad. But the fact that other people can make Star Wars games is a good thing outside of EA, because EA really has dropped the ball. I mean, yes, Jedi Survivor and Fallen Order were really good, but everything beyond that's just been nothing too impressive. So EA is probably not the right person to.
And the excitement is high for Outlaws, but we'll have to wait and see when it comes out whether or not it lives up to what does it live up to what EA did with the Battlefronts, or does it live up to the Fallen Order So.
Yeah, and just some things from the chat here. SaberWriter13 says, remember the leaks that happened and what we learned, how much money Disney was getting. Yes, we know Disney loves their money, so you're going to have to, to license their properties, you're going to have to pay them. And then Tricky reminds us that season 3 of The Mandalorian is being covered on Patreon, and Outlaws is the Star Wars game that Tricky is really looking forward to. So, I mean, I think it's a good idea from EA to focus less on licensed IPs. Probably something a lot of people should have done a while ago. But, I mean, yes, it's really disappointing that, to hear that 670 more people have been laid off from the games industry, which is just compounding the problem that we've had over the last year. But the fact that EA canceled a game being made by Respawn, which is probably one of their most known, well thought of studios, is not a great sign for EA overall. So, I mean, if they can, if focusing less on licensed IPs will keep them from having to fire as many people in the future, I'm all for it. But again, a company like EA, with as big as they are, and I mean, this is a step they probably should have taken a while ago.
Well, and also it makes you think of, I mean, look what Telltale did. They took on all those licensed IPs and then ended up going under because they got too big too quick. You got to pay for all those licenses. EA can absorb a little bit of that, but obviously they can't absorb that much of it because they're laying off 670 people and canceling licensed games. So I feel bad for the people getting let go. I don't feel bad for EA because you took on all these projects and now, we can't afford to make them, or however you want to look at it. And now we're going to drop projects. We're not going to focus on licensed IP, and we're letting go 670 people.
And how much of this is EA squandering the Star Wars license for so long? Like, if you're paying to use the Star Wars license, you get a game out and you make sure it's good and you get it out there. You don't just work on games and then fucking cancel them. You put them in the hands of the right studios, the right people, and you make sure that if you're paying for licensed games, especially Disney stuff, you make sure those games get out the door. So, I mean, I feel like a lot of restructuring is going on in the games industry right now, and that's why we see so many, studios being closed and people being fired. But I mean, when you're the head of a company as big as EA and you've been making games for all these years, you ought to know better. You not ought to have to fire so many people at once and just, I don't know. I just figured this is something EA should have found out a long, long time ago and taken action to guard against. But with it happening so often in the games industry these days, they're just one among the many. So
with all these layoffs, it makes me want to panic. Let's be real. But I keep going back to what Jeff said, Jeff Hanna, when he was on a couple months ago, where, we asked him about it. And he brought up something that we hadn't thought about, which was when COVID hit, everybody's work pool kind of got bigger because the government was throwing out free loans and people were getting bigger for the fact that everybody was working from home. So they hired more people to help spread the work out since they weren't doing it in-house. And now all those loans are coming due or the free money's not there. And so now they're cutting back on people. So a lot of that could be the cutbacks from that. I want to hang my hat on that and say, this is what it is. It's not as bad as it looks, but man, it looks really, really bad.
Yeah. And, before we move on to our next story, Tricky was going nuts in the chat, and I do want to go back and address that. We were talking about Skull and Bones, and Tricky says 60 from critics on Metacritic, 3.5 from users. He says, I hope my docs give me the go-ahead on Tuesday because Tricky is trying to come back next week. He says, I want to scream at you guys. Users are review bombing it because it's a games for service, not because it's bad. He said he includes one user review, and he says games as a service is cancer for the gaming industry, total rubbish. And look, people are always going to review bomb games, but I will point out about this game that the critic reviews are 60, Tricky. That's not great. So you're not sitting here. It's not like a game of the year contender that people are review bombing. It's a very seemingly mediocre game that even critics are calling out. So you don't need to scream at us. Yes, some people have review bombed the game because people hate games as a service, but also a game can be bad because they try to shoehorn it into a game as a service. So just because people, it's not just like, well, everything that's games as a service is A-okay. Like, no, some games don't need to fit into that live service model, and that can actually make a game bad and actually can, yes, kick down the review scores. Do you think that's a fair thing to say? Are you more on Tricky's side or mine?
No, I think that's a fair thing to say. There are games where they've been like, we want to make this alive. I mean, look at Battlefront. Battlefront was a fun game, and then EA decided, hey, we're going to microtransactions the holy hell out of this game, and the player base disappeared. And then they were like, oh, they loot boxed it and microtransactioned it. And then they were like, oh, let's change this. And the player base has kind of come back. But it's, you can make a live for service game if you build the game around that thought, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. But you can't you can't shoehorn in live for service because people aren't going to pay to win, and so on and so forth. So this isn't mobile gaming where you can nickel and dime people for $1 here and there. They're trying to still charge $3, $5, $10 for a bunch of cosmetic stuff, and people are like, no. And then they want to scream that, well, we didn't make a sequel or we didn't support this game because, we gave it away for free and no one paid the microtransactions. They don't say it that way, but you get what I'm saying. And it's like, duh, I feel there's a disconnect between, not necessarily maybe developers, but definitely the heads of these big groups like EA and such, and Ubisoft to a most extent, I guess, where they're like, this is what we think the gaming industry wants. And so far, most for live for services, most people are like, no. There are games that it works for, but as for a whole, no. Just like when everybody got on the Battle Royale kick. It doesn't work for every game. You can't shoehorn it in.
And Tricky does point out that 6 is not a bad. It's not a terrible score. Tricky, you're right. He says it's not a bad score, but it's a very mediocre score. And I'm going to be honest with you. When it comes to games, I'm not going to go pay for a mediocre game. So, if people want to bash the game because it's even mediocre. Or, the one area where I can say that it's unfair to bash the game is if you had expectations that weren't, like if you're coming in and expecting an Assassin's Creed experience, not, like an exact Assassin's Creed sequel or anything like that, but if you expected more of what you got in Assassin's Creed in Skull and Bones and your expectations were off, then that's not fair to bash the game or review the game.
That's not Skull and Bones' fault. That's your fault for going in with that expectations. Like I said, especially now, if nothing had changed from the very beginning, let's just say in a perfect world, nothing had changed. We hadn't gone through multiple directors. We hadn't gone through 3 complete direction changes. And you walked in and it wasn't like Black Flag or Black Flag-ish. Yes, I would warn everybody screaming to the hills, right? But this game has been in developmental hell. We've had multiple directors. We've changed directions 3 times, like I said earlier. You're not getting what was promised back in the beginning. Common sense tells you that. So to be sitting there screaming that it's not this, it's kind of a duh.
Well, Saber Rider's dropping some common sense in the chit-chat because Saber Rider says, how much money would you make if you have a fighting game Street Fighter style with Star Wars characters? He said, stop and take my money. And then also he says, Anthem would have been great. So yeah, it definitely seems like EA could have used the Star Wars license just a little bit better like, well, we could say the exact same thing about the people over at Embracer, but there's a little bit of more happy news to this story. This was written by IGN and Wesley Yinpool, originally reported on Bloomberg by Jason Schreier. The headline reads, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic remake dev Saber Interactive escapes Embracer in $500 million deal. According to a source known to Bloomberg, Embracer is reportedly selling off Saber Interactive to a private investor in a deal that's supposedly worth $500 million. The deal may include options for Saber to bring along multiple Embracer subsidies, though additional details are not known at this time. Saber was bought by Embracer back in 2020. Will this deal be enough to save the developer and allow them to continue to work on not quite dead Knights of the Old Republic remake? Stay tuned to Proven Gamers group pages as we report more about the news becomes available. Sometimes I feel like I shouldn't read everything that is in Matt's notes. But yeah, so Yield, I know in particular you've been afraid about consolidation in the games industry to, a bunch of companies being bought up and becoming, parts of larger companies like, say, Sony or Microsoft. But here we have something, a story where a developer, in this case Saber Interactive, is actually getting out of Embracer and able to escape, which I think is good news. Seeing companies being able to spin off. We've got another story coming up here in a second about another game studio going independent. But, I see this as positive news, Yield. I mean, we know Embracer is trying to get rid of, as Jeff has talked about, the guy who owns Embracer was just kind of collecting video game companies and they weren't doing much with them. And now they're trying to get rid of all these pieces. The latest piece is Saber Interactive. I see this as good news, though. Do you?
I do. And I'm also glad that Embracer, in the sense, is not being like, well, no, I'm just going to cut my losses and close the studio. Where they're like, oh, somebody wants to buy them. Okay, and I'm glad for that. I hope, fingers crossed, that they're able to take the Knights of the Old Republic license with them. I don't know who owns that. I don't know. Embracer may own that, and they might be able to negotiate that as part of the deal. I'm hoping for that because I never got to play the original, so I was really looking forward to this. But it's good in the fact that they're able, someone was willing to buy them, or maybe they were able to pool the money themselves. Who knows? We don't know yet. But I'm glad they're able to break off and we don't close another studio and now all those people are out looking for a job. They'll still have their job and now they're not answering to somebody else. They're answering to themselves. So now their future is up to them.
Well, I was trying to look in the article, but they've been sold to deal to become a they will become a privately owned company that essentially go independent. They don't have to answer to anyone anymore. It also remarks in the article that Gearbox is also up for sale, as Embracer seems to be just getting rid of everything. They bought Gearbox in 2021. They bought Saber in 2020, and when you're trying to sell off stuff for a few years later that you probably paid a lot of money for, you probably didn't make it a good decision in the first place. But it'd be nice if Gearbox could somehow wind up an independent studio of their own. But yeah, when companies can spin off from a larger company and become their own independent company after there's been so much consolidation, I see that as a benefit. Now, the problem is, and from what I'm reading in the article, is that I think Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, it's still in the works, which is a good thing, but it's stuck at Embracer. Like that does not get to come with Saber Interactive, I don't believe.
See, now that's a bummer. And hopefully, since they were the ones working on it, maybe we'll get lucky. Maybe this breakup is amicable, and Embracer will be like, you know what, here, go ahead and finish it. They won't be dicks and be like, no, it's ours. Thanks for working on it. We'll pass it down the line or trash it. So keep fingers crossed. Think positive.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully the Star Wars KOTOR games the KOTOR remake comes out, because I know a lot of people want to play it. People who didn't have a chance to play it before because they didn't have an Xbox or a PC. I know that I saw some comments from Curtis in the Facebook group that he still has his original copies, so he can go back and play those, which is great. But I also think that given the amount of improvements they can make to KOTOR, with remakes on the PlayStation 5, I think the PlayStation 5 version could easily be the definitive version of the game to play, like the best possible version. So it is disappointing on that level, but we'll just have to wait and see. Hopefully, if Embracer actually wants to get out Knights of the Old Republic remake, they, like you said, we'll maybe make a deal with Saber to be like, hey, we'll publish it. Just keep making it, and
you make it, we get a little bit of money, you get some money, and we all live happily ever after.
And I referenced this earlier, but we have another studio that has spun off from a larger company in the wake of all these layoffs. Crash 4 developer Toys for Bob is officially going indie. This comes from the Toys for Bob blog written by Paul Yan and Avery Lodato. As part of the recent Microsoft, in the wake of their purchase of Activision Blizzard / King, the future of Toys for Bob was in question. When a recent blog post, the developer announced that they were breaking away from Microsoft and going indie. The devs explain Activision and Microsoft have been supportive of their new direction, and there's a confidence all parties will continue to work closely in the future. So, even though Microsoft was going to close them, they will work with them in the future. And maybe Microsoft would be a good partner when, they're not having to keep the lights on and the doors open. Toys for Bob, if Toys for Bob can show that they can make good games, maybe Microsoft could be a good publishing partner. But it's just kind of a weird thought that, hey, we were going to close you guys, but why don't we, since you're going indie, why don't work with us in the future? But then again, it may be beneficial for Toys for Bob to have their games go multi-platform.
Yeah, I was going to say, at least they didn't burn any bridges on the way out, so that way they can work for whoever they want to work for.
Yeah, Crash Bandicoot is still stuck at Microsoft now because, Activision owned Crash Bandicoot. Now Crash Bandicoot is owned by Microsoft. But this does mean that Toys for Bob being indie can certainly potentially have their games now show up on PlayStation. So that is certainly some good news there. So I know that we were doing some chatting in the group before in the week leading up to this episode, and Matt had commented about how depressing this episode was and how depressing some of the news was. And yes, EA's layoffs and the canceling of the Mandalorian game, and then some more Sony layoffs that we're going to talk about in the future are certainly awful to talk about, especially in the wake of all the news we've had to share, in the last year. But Saber Interactive and Toys for Bob going indie, after all the problems that have happened in Embracer and Microsoft, just all the cuts they've made, are certainly two good stories that we can look at and say, you know what, the industry may be having to restructure, but it's not all gloom and doom, because there are some companies that are willing to go strike out on their own and survive in spite of all the cuts. What do you think, Yeel? Do you think that's fair to say?
That is very fair to say. I'm glad to see it, because those would be more, game developers and artists and story writers and programmers all trying to find a job somewhere else, and now they get to keep their jobs.
Yeah, and you look at, I know I've talked about Arrowhead Studios, the developer of Helldivers 2, possibly being bought by Sony. But, who knows? Maybe a studio that's successful that can make games that well says, you know what, we'll stay independent on our own. They've gotten the server issues figured out, and now you can seamlessly play the game whenever you want to. But that doesn't mean that all the news surrounding Helldivers 2 is, all bright and shiny. Because there have been some imposters that have tried to take advantage, piggyback on the success of Helldivers. This article was once again written by IGN and Wesley Yin-Poole, Tricky's Employee of the Week. Headline reads, Valve pulls fake Steam Helldivers 2 games, but devs express concern that they appeared there in the first place. 2 games were recently taken down off of Steam for impersonating the wildly successful Helldivers 2. Developers of these games and developers of these imposters, obviously in quotations, stole images and the game's title to list their own software, which obviously was not Helldivers. Arrowhead Studios quickly acted to let Valve know Valve know who were able to take the game's pages and refund customers who purchased those games. Additional reports indicated similar pages popped up for Palworld. Rightfully so, Valve is facing questions as to how these listings were able to make it onto Steam in the first place. It appears a loophole existed that allowed developers to modify the AAPP ID and get their games listed after cloning the game's actual Steam page. Hopefully, these high-profile issues don't. Hopefully, these high-profile issues cause Steam to look at the process and close the loophole. So, Yield, what I took from that is people are using assets from Helldivers to post as games, but they're not really actually games.
Wow, I didn't know that in today's day and age we could actually still do that. You know, I mean, just take images.
Tricky's typing furiously. I might have missed something. I might have gotten that a little wrong, but
take images and videos of Helldivers 2, claim that it's Helldivers 2, but we're actually selling you a totally different game. That's, yeah, I don't really know what to go with that.
Oh, Tricky says they were games, just not games they thought they were buying. So,
well, yeah, I get that. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, I thought it was just a pay. I didn't necessarily know that they were. I thought they might have just been using that they were posing as Helldivers, but weren't actually games themselves.
Oh no, I took it that they were games, but they're posing it as Helldivers 2, and people are buying it, and it's like, well, wait, this isn't Helldivers 2. And it's like I said, surprised that today's day and age you can do that.
I mean, people are smart. I mean, deviously smart. So if they can, find a workaround like that, I hate to say it, but some people will, and people will take advantage of that.
Well, yeah.
Tricky gives an example. He says it's like an image and a profile for GTA 5, but they got Saints Row instead. I mean, at least Saints Row is actually a good game still.
I'll say, yeah. At least
maybe they're actually be impressed if they did that, to be like, man, this game is a lot of fun. I like this a lot better than GTA.
This game's way better than Grand Theft Auto.
Saints Row is so much fun and so much more lighthearted. But yeah, I mean, obviously that is and Palworld was another example of something that kind of Valve let through the cracks. But as popular as Steam is, and as many users as they have, there's a lot of money going through there, and like I said, somebody is going to look to take advantage of that. So hopefully Valve can get that solved. But it just kind of goes to show the success of not only Palworld but Helldivers 2, that people would use those games to sell their own game. So I guess it's a very weird form of what am I looking for? Praise. A weird form of praise by trying to pose as that game to sell their other games. Still a scam, but just kind of a very weird pat on the back there. And once again, Tricky is furiously typing. We'll have to see what he says. Do we have any questions from the community?
Time to check my social media, yeah.
All right, we do have a question. And by the way, Tricky, you do know that you played that soundbite here, but that doesn't show up in our audio, so we have to add that later in, right? Or not add it in, depending on who is editing this week. We got a question here from Alexander Gonzalez. Alexander asks, what do you think about this year's reveals? Think some will still happen in June, maybe earlier, later. I'm assuming we're talking about game reveals, is what Alexander's questions is. Honestly, I may not be the best person to answer this, Alexander, because I've not been keeping up really on what's coming out later in the year. I mean, I looked at some of the big games. Like GameSpot had a listing of all the big games coming out in March, and there's just really, for me, I'm not really been impressed by what has been revealed so far. I mean, there were a few things that in Sony's last showcase that I was impressed with. I mean, like Yield, the Dave the Diver with Godzilla, that little collaboration coming to PlayStation. I was excited for that.
Dave the Diver looks good.
So there's definitely some stuff from there. But I definitely think that as a whole, we could be we could have a better idea of what's coming out later. And I guess maybe that's my own fault for, I typically tend to get tunnel vision when it comes to games because I focus so much on Sony being a PlayStation owner. But here, I'll try to look up some of the stuff that's what were some of those other games at the showcase? Because there was at least one other one that I was really excited for. For some reason, I can't.
Honestly, from the showcase, I don't really remember much. Most of the games that are coming out this year, I already kind of knew about, and I was excited for. But all of them come out like now. I've got Helldivers 2. I picked up Skull and Bones. Expeditions, a Mud Runners game, comes out Tuesday. I'll be picking that up. And Outlaws launches later this year. Dave the Diver was a surprise one that I'm like, ooh, I'll pick up that one. Of course, the Sea of Thieves announcement. I'll be picking up that one. I've been wanting to play Sea of Thieves since it launched. I don't know if there's any. I mean, there could be like more surprises, like Dave the Diver that's announced that I'm like, ooh, I want to play that. Other than that, there's not really anything other than Outlaws and Dave the Diver that are on my radar for this year. As for release dates, so my brother, Homer Gets Stuffed, made a very interesting hypothesis on Outlaws. There was a rumor, I didn't see it, but he and a guy from work, or a couple guys from work, saw it. And I can't remember where they saw it at. But there was a rumor floating around that Outlaws was touted as Q2 release date. And that would be what was it? I think May or June is the end of quarter two, something like that. Anyway, I think it was touted like around the end of quarter two. So my brother hypothesized that wouldn't it be awesome if they released Outlaws on May the 4th? Because that would be in the end of the quarter two window. And I like it. Don't know if it'll happen, but I like it.
Yeah, I think really the biggest reveal we've gotten this year is Death Stranding 2. I mean, we kind of heard about, Norman Reedus had commented on it, or, talked about how they were, starting production at least, or the script was being written or something like that. It was in the early stages, but official announcement, I think that's really the biggest thing that's come out this year. Except for, if you're a BioShock fan, then I think Judas is the biggest thing because that game looks really, really good and very BioShocky. So I think for me personally, that's the big announcement of the year.
Oh, he's asking about games not announced yet. I don't know what we'll get.
Yeah, but I think that we'll take another piece of this, Alexander, and talk. And you said that do you think that? Because Alexander does ask if we think that reveals will still happen. Reveals happen all throughout the year because obviously games releases are staggered. So Tokyo Game Show stuff will come out of PAX, although PAX is more about actually playing games and getting the experience to play them in person. But I think that like Tokyo Game Show and even State of Plays and Nintendo Directs and all that, we'll get those throughout the year. And yeah, we'll get more reveals. Sony recently talked about how we're not going to have an existing franchise show up on PlayStation 5 until 2025, which means 2025 is next year. I fully expect that we'll get something from Ghost of Tsushima, a full reveal, before the end of this year. I don't think there's any way. That has to be the next game out on their release schedule as far as their big existing franchises. It's the only one I could think of that would be next. So I think we'll hear about Ghost of Tsushima 2 before the end of this year. And then we yield anything Sony related. Do you think that we'll have before the end of the year? Do you think something will come out before Ghost of Tsushima 2 as far as Sony owned stuff? Because we know that the Wolverine game is going to come out before Ghost of Tsushima. We know that obviously Fair Play from Haven's going to come out. So I don't know. I've often talked about how I think it was last week when I talked about Blue Point Games and Housemarque. They'll probably be showing something off before the end of the year, I would hope. But really, my bets would be on Sucker Punch, Housemarque, and Blue Point to be one of the next big reveals for Sony and PlayStation. Yield, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head.
All right. T. Diddy, who's a top contributor, wants to know, Helldivers 2 price drop to bring in more gamers. Should other big titles follow the lead? So I'm assuming that T. Diddy's saying that Helldivers launching at $40, really helping people jump on board with that. Obviously price
it helps.
Yeah, price is definitely a big consideration when people buy games. Yeah, there are some games that people will buy at $70 regardless because they just want to play them. Horizon Forbidden West was one of those games for me. It was like it could have been $80. I would have bought it the first day because I just really wanted to play it. But there are a lot of games out there that people say, well, I want to play it, but I don't want to play it bad enough to, pay full price, so I'll just wait until it goes on sale. I think I've seen a lot of videos about Helldivers 2 in a very positive way, busting up the industry, busting up the idea of AAA, because they were able to launch at $40. And unfortunately, some games are so expensive these days that you literally cannot launch them at $40 without taking some kind of hit for how much money you put to those games. So I think that more and more people will look at a game like Helldivers and its success and say, okay, they launched at $40, but their development of that game allow them to launch at a lower price and maybe get more people on board early on and help the community thrive. So now through word of mouth, that game is even more popular.
Well, yeah, and also we don't know what expansions that they have planned for it. So maybe they plan on supporting this game like mad. And then, that's why they launched, and maybe their development cost was lower. That's why they launched at $40, because we're going to support the holy heck out of this game. And so if to me, spending $40 on the game, the more you support it, if I really like it, like I do Helldivers, then more than likely I'm going to buy your supported stuff to it. Like there's rumors of the mechs coming. I saw a video of the mech. A buddy, Prepare to Die Scum, said he saw a video of vehicles in the game already. So it all depends on if they give those to us for free. Some may be, paid. And, they'll make more of their money up if they sold it at a cheaper price. It took a loss. But I have a feeling they didn't, because the game, it doesn't feel overly complicated in a sense. I don't program, so I could totally be wrong. But I think it's a very well priced for the game we got, and it was done really well.
TD also asked if more developers, he said, should other big titles follow the lead? Well, yes, I think that more people will. I don't think every game is going to be launched at $40, but I think more people will take a look at the success of this and say, okay, I think there's been a long time coming, a reckoning in the games industry where it's the cost of production have ballooned so much that they need to, roll those back. And, you can put out really good games that don't cost $200 to make. Yes. So the big cinematic game experience that Sony puts out, you can definitely still do that every now and again, but not all of your games need to be that. Yes. Not all of your games have to sell a certain amount of copies, or else that studio's dead.
So here's something else. Okay, go ahead. Sorry, finish your thought.
No. I think that when TDD asks, should big companies follow this lead? Yes, I think they absolutely should follow the lead. Not for every game, but it definitely helps if there are more games like Helldivers out there.
Agreed. So here's something else I was going to point out. So Expeditions, a Mud Runners game that I'm looking forward to that launches on Tuesday. It is launching at a $40 price point as well. But I know with Expeditions, they've already said that they're going to have a season pass with it as well, which if you've played SnowRunner, they just announced a 4th season where they do 4 packs of maps. Some packs have 2 maps. So, I was just looking. So you got 8 maps with the base game. And they've already announced that they're going to have, a season with Expeditions, which you'll get more maps and vehicles and different base modules and so on and so forth. And I know with SnowRunners, and they said they're kind of doing the same thing with Expeditions, but with SnowRunners, this is the season pass, this is what we're doing, but they didn't alienate the people who didn't buy the season pass, because the season pass, you would get like a special vehicle and you get these maps and blah, blah, blah. But then the regular game, the people who didn't buy the season pass, you would also get like a free vehicle and a bunch of cosmetic stuff that you could do with your vehicle. So I thought that approach was different, and I liked it because they weren't alienating people who were like, I'm not buying your season pass, but they still gave those people something for free. So this could be a way of launching at $40 if you have a plan forward of how you're going to kind of keep expanding your game, of how, that makes it interesting. You buy a game at $40. Let's say you have no interest at first to buy their season pass. You play it at $40. You're like, you know what? That was really fun. I'm going to try this first season pass, and we'll see how it goes. So right now, I like this approach because the few games that I've played that have had this, I don't feel like they're trying to force it down your throat to do it. You got to buy our pass. Their games have been fleshed out, and then they're just adding to the experience. Sooner or later, someone will take advantage of that and totally muck it up. But the games that I've played that have kind of gone this model feel like they've done it the right way. I hope I made my point. I felt like I talked in a circle.
Don't worry, I do that all the time. I'm sure it'll be fine. And we do have one more question here from T. Diddy.
Okay.
Suicide Squad's physical copies have dropped due to their poor performance. Should it be a free-to-play game? I definitely think that I think that's something you have to bake. I mean, some people can pivot on occasion, but I think that
it normally doesn't work. I mean, look what happened to Knockout City.
Yeah, I mean, if people don't like your game, and it's there, like I said, there's a lot of negativity around Suicide Squad. I don't think that going free to play is necessarily going to change that.
It won't save it. It'll up your player base initially, but it may not save it.
Yeah, I mean, they plan to release DLC. I think Tricky said 10 drops of DLC with a villain in each one. 12 drops of DLC with a different villain in each one. But I think this is kind of it has to be baked into the model when you're making the game, because you decide that, once you know how much it costs to make a game, because you're basing your sales pitch and, when you launch it at retail, you're definitely basing that on what you have to charge MSRP and then like what your DLC is going to cost. So I don't know that they could necessarily launch, make it free to play without losing a ton of money. So I think that would have to be baked into the original plan for the game. But some studios can pivot, but I don't necessarily know in this instance if it would help Suicide Squad. Another question from T. Diddy. Do you think that the latest $1 billion lawsuit that took place in Great Britain against Sony is the reason why they closed their studio? I don't know what the lawsuit is, honestly.
Okay, I hope you did, because I don't know. I remember hearing something about one, but I never heard what it was about.
Yeah, T. Diddy, we'll circle back to that one, because I do not know. But yeah, I'm not aware of any of the lawsuits, so we'll just have to see. Come on, Tricky, type these faster.
Copy paste. The lawsuit about them monopolies on PSN. I don't even remember that. Do you?
Basically how they weren't selling game cards, so you had to buy directly from the PSN.
Oh, you couldn't buy a Suicide Squad card. You had to buy PSN. Is that what it is, or am I doing this wrong?
We'll come back to it next week. I want to read back up on that before I give a decision, but or I give my answer one way or the other, and hopefully Tricky will be back so he can give his opinion. Harry V says Helldivers 2 or Pacific Drive. Well, I'm playing Helldivers 2, so
yes. I mean, honestly, from what I've seen of Pacific Drive, I want to play it, but you're two different types of games. You've got a third-person shooter, futuristic military shooter, and you've got a first-person driving to survive story-based game. So it's kind of comparing apples to oranges. I'm interested in both. Obviously, I'm already playing Helldivers. I'm interested in Pacific Drive. I did not buy it day one. It is on my probably pick it up on a really good sale price because my February, March were already full of games that I was buying and something had to go.
And Harry, I'm not particularly familiar with Pacific Drive, so maybe you just gave me a game to look into. But yeah,
you can check it out. So it takes place seems like it takes place on the West Coast. And it's like I said, it's a first-person drivable survivor game. You have a station wagon that you can customize, and it looks sort of. I got an X-Files vibe out of it, so it looked interesting.
Okay, I mean, so a sci-fi aspect to it.
That's what I got out of it. It was mainly. It was. I mean, obviously there was gameplay in the trailer, but they had some music playing over the background and stuff like that. And it's not like you heard a lot of talking going on. You know, they were just showing at different aspects of gameplay and customization of the car and stuff like that. So Tricky posted it in there, Alex, so you could watch it, the trailer. I saw it on, I forget why. I roamed the store quite a bit, and it popped up, and I'm like, all right, that sounds like a neat title. Let's watch it. And I watched the trailer, and I was like, okay, wish list. That looks cool. My wife was like, that looks so dumb. And I'm like, that's okay. I'll play it.
Is this game out already?
Yeah, it just came out end of last week, I think, maybe, or last Tuesday. Yeah, it just came out.
And I tell you, I need to get back on looking at the game releases because I just don't know shit anymore.
Well, like I said, the only reason I found it was I was looking at one sale, and it pops up, games you might be interested in, and that was one of the games, and I'm like, all right, let's watch the trailer. What's it going to hurt? But I hadn't heard about this game until then, and it launches end of February, and I was like, oh, okay, never heard of this game.
Yeah, it definitely looks like you can replace the pieces of your car as they get messed up. Definitely a very stylized game, it looks like, and it looks like you can actually take pieces from other cars and use them, I guess, for your own car.
I gathered that.
Well, yeah, there's a car on the side of the road that they're stripping for parts, it seems, and then going back to their garage, and I guess you can use that to outfit your car or whatever you like to do. Yeah, doors are coming off, and side panels are coming off and going back on. Doors are going back on, so I guess you're just trying to make the meanest, baddest machine you can to survive, as you said.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
Yeah, this game looks really, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but this game looks very weird.
Like, it does, doesn't it? But
nothing I've ever played before.
To me, it looks like cool weird. Like, I'll probably severely suck at this game, but so I'm hoping there's a really good story hook.
Yeah, I hate to assume it looks like aliens are somehow involved. I don't know. You're obviously trying to make your car the best thing it can be, because you're obviously trying to survive against something out there, some threat against it. Yep, there's floating shit in the sky. There's something going on, and obviously there's not a lot of people around. So yeah, it looks like you're just scavenging and trying to make your car, upgrade your car essentially. So the sky's red. That's not good. I know that tornado, a green sky means a tornado, so I don't know what the hell a red sky means. Maybe some giant alien death beam. Yeah, I don't know. It looks like a very lonely game, a very tense game because you're just kind of out there on your own, and but definitely unique. So I still say I'm going to keep playing Helldivers 2, Harry, because I'm very much into that game right now, and I can't see anything pulling me away from it. But Pacific Drive, I'm not saying it's a no. I'm saying it's a maybe. Just because it looks so unique, and I love the art style. So I'll add that one to the list. But right now, if I have to choose between playing the two, it's definitely going to be Helldivers.
It's definitely Helldivers.
I've got so much time invested in it, and not only that, but like I said, we've got Tricky playing. There's so many members of the community that are playing. We still need to play with Matt, so it's just a fun experience getting together and playing some Helldivers. So that definitely kind of tops the list for me.
So speaking of that, I got to think about this the other day. this is the most fun I've had playing a multiplayer game since Warhawk. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I had more fun with Rocket League, I'd say. I mean, like, yes, I had a lot of fun with Warhawk, but I would say Rocket League multiplayer fun is in between there. So I don't think it's, for me, the most fun I've had since Warhawk. I think it's the most fun since I've had playing Rocket League with everybody.
The reason I didn't say Rocket League, Tricky, because Rocket League is more like a sport game, where I can equate Helldivers to more Warhawk because it's a war game. Now, you're not playing against another group of people like Warhawk, but you're still, a third-person fighting game. So that's why I was equating it to that. And Alex, did you see the last question from Shannon Lynch?
Yes. With the success of Helldivers, will we see a massive push from other developers to get on the same bandwagon and develop games with similar aspects? Yes. I think that it definitely, whenever there's success in the games industry, people look to ape that. They look, what made that game successful? So they take little bits from this shooter or that platformer or, that survival game, and they try to incorporate that into their games. I mean, you look at something like Darksiders, and its success was the fact that it took its inspiration from Zelda, essentially, and was, a ton of fun. Like, Vigil made a really good game that, yes, you could tell was based on another game structure, but they did it so well and it made the game so much fun that you didn't care. So people are always looking to, take inspiration from other games, and especially successful games, and find out how they can incorporate into their games to make it a lot of fun. So I definitely think we'll see, I hate to say Helldiver clones, but games, of that model, try to put out more games like that, just to kind of ape off the success or piggyback off the success of Arrowhead and Helldivers, because like I said, I've seen a lot of videos on YouTube about people commenting on how this game is busting up AAA, and I think that a lot of people are right. This game is extremely successful, and it was able to launch at a lower price point, so people will probably instead of firing a bunch of people, hopefully look at a game like this and maybe not make a clone, but just say, what made this game successful and how are they able to keep their budget in line, and how can we do that too?
I agree with everything Alex has said. The more Helldivers is successful and the more the numbers go up, I'm definitely sure you'll see Steam games like this. But you may start to see some developers from Sony take notice, because Sony had that big announcement a while ago that they were raising all their games to $70, and then out comes Helldivers 2 at a $40 price point, and it's just taken off like wildfire. And I know I'm telling everybody who I know who plays video games who ain't played Helldivers yet, I'm like, you need to watch some video on it and you need to play it, because it's a freaking blast. And I normally don't sell games like that to people who won't play a third-person shooter or a military-esque shooter, and this game is that much fun. I've never playing with the guys. I need to play with some randoms like Alex is brave enough to do, but just playing with the guys, we are having just an absolute blast. And even when you get annoyed with somebody, it's still fun. I shot Alex in the back of the head by accident trying to save him Friday night, and was like, oh, my bad. So, total fun.
It happens. It happens when fire is there. But yeah, I mean, I think that's just kind of something that happens in the games industry. Probably a lot. I mean, you can see it in games. You can see the inspiration, but you're always looking to build off your own success as well as, those of others as well. So making the best game you possibly can and having the much success as you possibly can definitely means looking at what other people do and taking from that. So that is going to be the end of our community section and our questions. Thank you to TDD, to Shannon, to Alexander, and I feel like there was one more name that I missed that I don't want to, and Harry as well, for those questions. We appreciate you all. And that is going to bring us to the topic of the week. And the topic of the week definitely kind of blends into some of those questions, talking about the success of Helldivers, because we have more layoffs at Sony. Let's see here. Where did I? Okay, I lost the episode. Okay, here we go. 611. Lost the agenda. Looking back at a previous agenda. So, once again, IGN Wesley Yenpool checking in with his article. Sony announced a significant PlayStation layoffs affecting 900 staff. London studio to close. Sony announced a significant round of layoffs affecting 900 staff, or 8% of its global PlayStation workforce. Affected studios include Insomniac, Naughty Dog, Guerrilla, Firesprite, and the PlayStation London studio, which was shut down entirely. Alongside the layoffs, Sony has canceled a number of in-development games. Shortly after the announcement, a photo revealing a soon-to-be retired CEO Jim Ryan with the team at London Studio circulated the web. The photo was reportedly taken 6 days before the announcement. And, it's all smiles in the picture with Jim Ryan there. Surely they couldn't have known what was coming. But
that's kind of that aspect. That's real shitty. You can't paint it any other way. The CEO comes around and pats everybody on the back and takes pictures. Y'all, yeah, I love y'all. And then 6 days later, you're all out of a job.
Yeah, and of course, Firesprite, one of their newly acquired studios, Naughty Dog, another round of layoffs at Naughty Dog, a Guerrilla, despite the success of Horizon.
Insomniac.
I saw comments, people were like, what the fuck are they firing people from Insomniac for?
What have they done wrong?
All they've done is buoy the PlayStation 5 as much as they can. And again, some of this could be, just talent that's, I hate to say redundant, but necessarily that they don't have any plans for anymore, they don't need for future projects. I mean, there is that kind of restructuring after a team, releases a project or a studio releases something. They don't necessarily always need people for the future, so some people may be lost in the shuffle. But that still, it's all shitty. 900 people is a lot, and this is not the first round of layoffs that Sony's had in the last year. So the big takeaway from this for me, besides the number, is that they shut down London Studio entirely. Yield, do you know what London Studio made?
No, I don't. So please enlighten me. I was curious.
They made VR games.
Oh, really?
So
are we not supporting our very expensive peripheral that we were trying to tout during the state of play?
So if you're making PSVR 2 games, or if you bought a PSVR 2, you're not feeling too great right now because Sony just shut down their one studio dedicated to making VR games. And Sony has been known in the past to not support shit like this.
Vita! Excuse me, I had a cough there.
But other developers can certainly make things for the VR, but you're expecting, when you buy something like that Sony's also going to be making games for the VR, but it's kind of hard to imagine that now, given them shutting down London Studio.
Well, especially their own studio. I mean, if you buy a studio under your umbrella, and that's what they do VR games, then that's where you're, in my thought process, that's where you're going to funnel the most of your first party, VR games is through this studio. Here you go. We want you to push our peripheral. You guys are our VR guys. And now you've closed that studio. So now you're going to leave it up to third parties to do it. That's what they did with the Vita. And, after the initial couple of years, no one did anything for the Vita. I'm just saying, Sony's got a bad history with this.
I've made comments here before, and there's an article, actually, the third article that we were going to talk about this week. Tricky actually wants us to save it for next week. But look, I've said it. I've said it before. If the PSVR 2 was successful, they would share sales numbers. If you have something they've constantly touted PlayStation 5 sales numbers globally, and if you sell something really well, you should, because that good press is good for your product. If someone hears, they sold this many PlayStation 5s or this many Xboxes or this many Switches, well, hell, that only feeds the fire. I want to get one of those things too. Oh, they got this game and that game. They got Spider-Man. They got Horizon. Oh, got Wolverine coming out. Yeah, I want to play that. But when you don't say anything, when it's dead silent about that VR, whatever console it is, VR or not, that's a terrible sign. You're not marketing. You have a perfectly good opportunity to tout sales and to market the thing after it's been released, and you're not. And you know why that is, Yield? It's because it's probably not successful. And if PSVR was successful, I don't know why they would close an entire studio devoted to making those games.
Can't argue with you, Alex. You're speaking logic here.
Well, Tricky says 5 million in the chat. Tricky, where did you get this number from? Is that sales of the PSVR so far? And why am I hearing this from you and not from Sony?
He got it from Wiki. You better not say Wiki.
Oh, Jesus Christ, Tricky, not the Wiki. No, but why am I hearing this from Tricky and not from Sony? Because Sony, as far as I know, has not posted on the blog about this.
Tricky's paid by Sony. Stand by for a link. Okay.
Yeah, but so we got another story to talk about when Tricky. We'll get back to Tricky's link, but we got another story to talk about here, where Firesprite, which is one of those studios that was recently purchased and was hit by layoffs in this round. IGN Wesley Unipool once again. He's the MVP of this episode. But Sony-owned dev Firesprite reportedly suffered from a toxic culture. Fresh report claims. Sony has yet to comment on several allegations surrounding their Liverpool-based studio Firesprite, but claims the studio crunch, high-profile exits, and a toxic work culture have come in wake of recent layoffs. So here we have. We've heard about the toxic culture that was at Activision, and unfortunately, like crunch. And I'm not, saying that what was happening at Firesprite is anything on the level of what was at Activision, but you really don't hear a lot of, when it comes to the PlayStation studios, toxic work cultures. I feel like this is something that they generally stay away from. But we have a newly purchased studio that they. Not only are laying people off from, but now that we learn that there is, from reports, potentially a toxic work culture. I think that crunch is going to be. It seems like crunch is one of those things that you can avoid it, but it seems like it's just pervasive from the just pervasive in the video games industry. Like crunch is just kind of one of those things that tends to happen because people need to hit time, they need to hit dates, and they want to get games out. It is admirable when studios don't have to do that and when companies can stay away from that. But crunch is just one of those things that you hope to avoid, but it just seems like it's everywhere in the games industry. So, I mean, I don't want to write that off because that's not a great work culture because people have to be able to balance their lives with work. But the video games industry is just crunch has seemingly been there for so many years and still exists that, I mean, it's almost like, when you sign up for a job in the games industry, you can almost assume that it's going to be there. Like it comes with every studio. But like the article said, high profile exits, toxic work culture, like just you have to wonder if the layoffs are connected to that, and maybe Sony trying to clean up the culture there. So maybe some of the more high profile higher ups were asked to leave. We don't really know, but it is odd that you have claims of this followed by
you have layoffs. Yeah, you have layoff. You have that company named in the mass layoff, and then there's a report coming out about toxic work culture. You'd almost have to think they're one and the same. It would be a safe bet. I would put money on it.
Now, we should also point out that Insomniac and Guerrilla and Naughty Dog, we haven't heard these things about, and they still had layoffs. So it may not be that they're tied together, but if there is a culture of toxicity there, then Sony obviously would be doing their best to get in there and clean that out. You don't spend money on studio and then have shit like this pop up and just let it thrive. You get in there and you clean it out, and you create a better place where people actually want to work. So we don't know if it's tied to, but certainly not a good look from Sony when you hear something so negative about one of their studios, but then also they're laying off so many people, 8% of their workforce, and then also closing a studio that, did really, a lot of their VR games or was focused on primarily on VR.
Hey, you want to know what Firesprite does?
What?
VR games.
Oh, well.
I just looked it up. I'm like, what does Firesprite do? They did Horizon Call of the Mountain. They did Playroom VR. I was looking through their game list. A lot of them's VR games, and I'm like, oh, that's not a good sign either.
Yeah, I mean, good that Fire Sprite's still open and they can still make VR games, because apparently, Horizon Call of the Mountain is an awesome game. I've heard great things about it.
So have I.
But then when you shut down an entire studio that could be making VR games for you, that doesn't really do a lot for your focus on VR. It just only shows me that you're going to lessen your focus on VR, because they're not going to have Naughty Dog and Sucker Punch and Insomniac start doing VR games. And it's not like Fire Sprite can double its output. So instantly you have half of a focus on VR. Sony, so I said 5 million, and Tricky was looking for a link. So this is from a Tech Radar article. It's from 2023, May. So we're going on a year ago. Quote, Sony's numbers here reflect CFO Hiroki Totoki, who is now taking over as the leader at Sony at SIE in the interim after Jim Ryan's gone. Earlier statement regarding PSVR 2 sales, Totoki stated back in March that PSVR 2 had a good chance of outselling the original hardware. PSVR managed a lifetime sales figure of 5 million. So 5 million was not even the sales of the PSVR 2. It's just the sales of the VR, the original VR, that Totoki said had a good chance of outselling. So we still don't know. We still have not gotten a recent update in a year. And Tricky says, my bad. Yeah, you're bad. In a year, we still haven't had sales update on PSVR 2, which I will say,
and they still haven't sold
bad.
5 million.
It's bad. That's bad. Tricky in the chat. I'm sorry to be talking to Tricky so much in the chat, listeners, but can you admit that's bad, Tricky, that we haven't gotten an update on sales in the last year? He's typing. He says that's bad.
Okay.
There we go.
We're in agreement.
Good to know we're not being unfair. But yeah, so we will be saving our third article, and I'll give you guys a preview. It's from IGN, and the headline reads, a year since its release, Sony seems to have abandoned the PlayStation VR 2. That comes from IGN. That is not us. So Tricky wants to be back this next week to talk about that. But I think that based on the fact that IGN's writing that, and one, we just had a studio closure, and we don't have any sales updates, that's definitely
not good a sign.
I think that IGN has, it's worth throwing out there that quite possibly that is the case. Yeah. So we will continue this discussion next week when hopefully Tricky is back, or if it's Matt's just back, then we'll tackle it with him, and Tricky can send in comments or whatever. But we won't just sit on that story forever. Well, Tricky says it's written by an indie writer, but it was still published on IGN. IGN still signed off on that. It's not a staff writer, but still someone, an independent writer who IGN still published. So IGN still signed off on it, Tricky. All right. So that is going to be the end of our show, Yield. Before we get out of here, though, how about we go ahead and do some shout-outs?
What?
You
I said shout-outs.
What?
Shout-outs.
What?
I want to shout out to Stone Cold Steve Austin. Austin316 says, I just podcasted your ass.
We're here.
How about you go ahead and give your shout, sir?
So give a shout out to everyone who posted questions for us this week. That's most we've had in a while. Shout out to everybody who was hanging out in the Twitch chat if you were there. Thanks for hanging out with us, watching our player cards. Shout out to Homer Get Stuff, Prepare to Die or Scum, to Brain 76, Alex, even Tricky for jumping in for some Helldivers with him. We'll get him up to speed, folks. He will not be cannon fodder for long. Trust me. Even if we have to drag him kicking and screaming, he will either keep up or he'll move on. Shout out to some warmer weather in the area. This is rather nice for 1st of March.
So it was 70 today here in Louisville, but late last week we were worried about tornadoes because the temperature dropped about 30 degrees in like 6 hours.
We had some Wright Pat supposedly got hit with some. The Air Force Base around here supposedly had one. So yeah, our tornado siren went off where I live, but I looked at the radar and don't know why. It was all south, but anyway. But I wasn't the only one. A lot of people said their tornado sirens went off that night.
No, I took Athena out in the evening. It was like, oh man, it's nice. I'm in my shorts.
It was super nice that night.
Feels great. And then I'm on my way to work, or I get to work the next day, and I look at the weather report, and it's like it's supposed to get down to the high 30s. I'm like, fuck, I didn't leave the heat on. Great. Everything was fine. No, everything was fine. But yeah, it's just kind of a stark drop in temperature.
Oh yeah. Well, welcome to the Midwest.
I've lived here all my life, Field.
I know. It's awesome when it does that. I mean, in a annoying type of way. See who else I want to give a shout out to.
The Helldivers crew?
I'm sure. Yeah, I gave a shout out to the Helldivers crew. Shout out to Nitro, because that's my other co-op buddy. Saw him playing Lawnmower Simulator. I'm getting him into the simulation games, and I feel proud about it. Tricky wants to shout out Jeff for trolling Tricky with deep dish pizza. I have to agree. I had a Chicago-style pizza from one of the not local pizza joints, but one of the neighboring towns' pizza joints, and it was really, really good. So I have to side with Jeff on this one, Tricky. I think that's it. Shout out to all the pimps and madams of the Whoredom. You guys are all awesome for hanging out with us on social medias and the Facebook group and gaming with us. Gareth, don't forget to shout out Gareth for his rarity contest. You're doing awesome with that, Gareth. Yeah, that's it. Alex, it's all you.
And I want to give a shout out to our awesome community, the listeners, the fans, the fuel to the fire that is Trophy Whores. Thank you to everyone who we had T Diddy post in the chat. Thank you, T Diddy, for showing up. Thank you for your questions as well, and everyone who gave us questions. Give shout outs to those who could not be here. Tricky, he's not on the show, but he's producing in the background. A shout out to Matt and to V, Matt, who's on the podcast, and V, who joins us from time to time, but also who runs stuff in the background. Thank you all very much. Well, V was in the chat. I didn't know that, Tricky. That's why I pay you to keep. Well, I don't pay you anything, but it's why I pay you in compliments to keep up with these things. So, V, thank you for being in the chat as well. Give a shout out to Arrowhead for Helldivers. I have put almost 40 hours into this game so far, and I've been playing it for maybe a week and a half. So the game is a ton of fun. So if you haven't jumped aboard,
aboard.
You got people to play with in your community. If there's anyone out there in the community who is playing the game and wants to play with us, just let us know. Leave something in the Facebook chat or something, or get in touch with us, and I'm sure we'd be happy to play with everybody because we just love playing the game. And I'm usually on every night. I usually play the game every night. So. Last but not least, give a shout out to my awesome and loving girlfriend Ashley. I love you, hun. That is going to be the end of my shout outs. Yield, I think it's time for us to get out of here. Sorry, I've got a cat. One of our cats is here on the podcasting table, and I'm trying to get him off while close the show. Come on, Cosmo, buddy. Get down, buddy. I'll pet you later. That is going to be the end of episode 611 of Trophy Horse. Thank you all very much for listening. Thank you.
The pet population. Have your pet spayed or neutered. Goodbye, everybody.
All right, Yield, do 5 seconds of silence.